In this video, we are forecasting a Arctic cold front that continues to move south that will set up for a winter battle zone from the southern plains to the mid-south. All the details on all of that are coming right up. All right, welcome back into another more weather forecast video. We are back in the weather room. A couple of days ago, I was outside forecasting winter storm Cassandra in St. Louis, telling you guys the latest details. We did end up around 2 to 3 inches in my area. It was a little bit of an underperformance, but overall the forecast was pretty good, especially south of my area in Missouri. Especially south of St. Louis. I live in St. Louis. South of St. Louis, we got some pretty big totals, but that storm is completely out of here, and now we are forecasting another, not just one storm, but a series of small storms that are going to cause problems in the southern United States. So before we get into that forecast, let's look at the current conditions with the new radar I have. I did get this radar a couple of days ago, and it is very good, and I will be using it in a lot of new videos coming up. So stay tuned. Tell me in the comments if you like this new radar. It is a pretty good radar. It is GR Earth Gibson Ridge radar. Very good radar. Make sure you check it out if you are a weather enthusiast as well. But the current conditions right now in the Northeast, we do have some snow ongoing into northern New York, northern Vermont, and northern Maine. Overall, not expecting much with this. We could see up to 5 to 8 inches into parts of Maine, but the main story that's going on right now today is the marginal risk of severe weather in the south. Now, the severe weather aspect of this is not huge. An isolated, maybe 1 or 2 tornadoes cannot be ruled out, but I wouldn't expect many tornadoes with this event. Damaging winds are also a threat, and we're also going to see lightning here. But that flooding risk here is big as well. You can see we do have flood warnings south of Jackson and north of New Orleans here. We're just going to see a lot of rain training over these areas today, from Jackson to New Orleans to north of Houston, say Baton Rouge, Shreveport, Monroe, especially here in the Gulf states north of the coast here, and that could cause some problems with flooding. So stay weather aware out there before you go out on the roads. Make sure none of those roads are flooded, because we could see some flooded roadways. Overall, not expecting too much with this, but some flooding today is definitely possible in this region. So let's get straight into the forecast on that series of storms we're expecting this week, looking at the European model. So right now, of course, we do have that snow across the Northeast around the time I'm filming this video at 1:45, and that rain down south into the Gulf states. As we go into later tonight, we are going to see some wintry precip into Illinois, into the St. Louis area, and southern Missouri. We're not expecting much of this, much out of this. Maybe a glaze of ice and maybe a trace of snow here, but not expecting much. But be careful, some slick spots could be around in the morning near the St. Louis area into central Illinois, and that is going to continue to move south as we go into early Monday morning. Right now, looking at around 6 a.m. But that is just a precursor, really appetizer of what we're expecting as we go into the coming days of this week here. So as we keep going into Monday here, you can see we're going to see our first storm here set up. And we can see we do have some snow down here into southern Missouri, some freezing rain into Oklahoma here. And you can see here's our Arctic cold front. It's going to kind of set up a stationary boundary here into the southern plains across the mid-south into Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas. And many storms are going to ride along this front, and that's going to create some big problems. So this is our first one going into late on Monday and into early on Tuesday here. So we're talking about 6 p.m. on Monday, some light snow into southern Missouri, and some light freezing rain into northern Arkansas here. Overall, I'm not expecting much with this storm as well. But as we go into Tuesday here, later on Tuesday, this is when we're going to really see our biggest storm out of this set up. One of the bigger storms with this series of storms. So we're going to see some freezing rain set up into northern Texas, southern Oklahoma here, and some snow as well on the northern side here. You can see here's our snow and here's our freezing rain. And if you're not familiar, what does freezing rain mean? It's basically ice. So it's rain that falls to the ground, but then there's a cold layer of there's a small layer of cold air, and then that makes the rain freeze at the surface. So this is our first of the series of storms that we're expecting here, first big one, and this could cause some problems. Again, we're looking at around early on Tuesday here, so 9 a.m., and we are seeing some freezing rain into northern Texas and southern Oklahoma here. As we keep going into Tuesday, you can see this spreads on into Arkansas. That freezing rain there in the pink, that sleet there in the purple, but that freezing rain is worse than the sleet in most cases here. And then we are going to see some light, maybe moderate snow into northern Arkansas and to southern Missouri. We're looking at 3 p.m. here on Tuesday. Then as we go into 6 p.m. here on Tuesday, we're going to see this boundary set up, and we're going to see some more Gulf moisture set up, and another little tiny storm here form, creating more ice, freezing rain here into northern Texas. So this is just going to be round after round after round. So as this little hit of freezing rain goes from Oklahoma and Texas over to Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee, another one is going to form into northern Texas, and then again, by the time we go into around the same time, we saw this on Tuesday, on Wednesday here at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, we're going to see more freezing rain into northern Texas, into southern Oklahoma, and we're just going to see a boundary set up here where we're going to continue to possibly see freezing rain in these areas, and that's not a good recipe. That's a recipe for ice accretion on surfaces, on those roads, and this could cause a lot of problems in some places here. So as we keep playing this out, we go into around 3 p.m. on Wednesday, we do see some warmer air start to resurge, and that basically is our last round of freezing rain, of snow and sleet here. We could see another round as we go into Thursday, but for right now, we don't know too much about that. That's a little bit too far out, and also that is not looking like it will probably set up into anything here. But our main rounds are going to be early on Wednesday, or first early on Tuesday, throughout Tuesday, into Wednesday, especially in this area. Put it a little bit too far out, especially in this area from Tennessee into Arkansas into Texas here is where we could see a battle zone set up, where we could see freezing rain. I know that's a little bit dramatic, but we could see freezing rain, some sleet, and some snow, and that's just going to create problems out on those roadways, and it's really something we are going to have to continue to watch here, so stay tuned for these forecasts. So here's what the European model is forecasting for ice. This is how much ice we expect to go onto the surfaces according to the European model here. And you can see obviously where we have our stretch of it from northern Texas into southern Oklahoma, central and northern Arkansas here, and into western Kentucky, Tennessee, as well as southern Missouri, but especially into northern Texas and southern Arkansas in these areas, and then southern Oklahoma here, and into Arkansas here. That's where I'm really worried about. We could see continued freezing rain over good periods of time here, and even once the first hit of it moves out, then another hit can move in. Say we see our first hit of freezing rain early on Tuesday into Texas, and then another hit of it goes in on Wednesday, early on Wednesday. So that's what we're dealing with here. Again, this could shift north and south, just like a snowfall map. This can shift. We're going to still see changes. And overall, is the European model pretty bullish here? Yes, this is a lot of ice. I mean, we're talking about up to 1 inch of ice into northern Texas. You've probably seen maps going around on Twitter or on all the social media platforms of 1.5 inches of ice or something like that. We're not really expecting that. I think the European model is a little bullish here, but this shows that this is a possibility. If we do have freezing rain just going over the same areas for a long period of time or multiple hits of that, we could see big ice accretion here into northern Texas, southern Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas here, and into, say, Tennessee here. So if you're in Memphis, Little Rock, into Oklahoma City, especially points south, east of Dallas, or west of Dallas here, into Abilene, or say south of Lubbock, into Midland, Texas, Wichita Falls, Texas as well here. Make sure you are prepared for this, or make sure you stay tuned for these updates. For right now, you don't really need to get too prepared for this. Just make sure you're planning ahead. Forecasts can still change here as we do look at the GFS model. We don't have total agreement between all the models. In a lot of models for right now, we do have agreement that we're going to see ice in this area, but overall the totals are pretty much all over the place. With the GFS model, we still have the same footprint of ice. It's just a little bit less widespread and a little less bullish. It's just on the smaller side, but still in northern Texas, into central Arkansas, and into western Tennessee here, we're still going to have to watch for that ice. Most of the models are hinting at it at this point, so it's almost a guarantee that in these areas we are going to see ice or freezing rain. how much do we see actually accrete on the ground? That's something that we'll have to look at in the coming days. So make sure you stay tuned for these updates. But a good model to look at here for this ice is the NWS model, or the NWS blended models. This is the National Weather Service forecast, and you can see it is a little bit more broader, especially in Texas, a little bit more southeast, but it's less bullish. It's more realistic in these areas. Again, this can shift north to south. The totals can shift, but I mean, we're talking about up to 1/4 of an inch, maybe 2/4 of an inch here in Texas. Into southern Oklahoma, that's definitely enough to cause problems out on those roadways. Even when you're, getting up in the morning and stepping out onto your porch or your deck, that's going to be out on that deck. So we could see, slick spots all over the place if something like this happened, even if it's not up to an inch of ice or up to 2/4 of ice here, 2/4 of an inch of ice here, we're still going to see problems with this storm. And even into Tennessee, Arkansas, southern Missouri, we're going to see probably up to 0.10 of an inch here into these places. So into Memphis here, especially into these areas, we could see some pretty big ice accretion. So we're just going to have to continue to monitor the forecast. Things are still subject to change, so we need to continue to monitor the forecast. Stay tuned to these updates. Stay tuned to the National Weather Service. Things can still change, but we are expecting a pretty big ice event, especially northern Texas, southern Oklahoma, into parts of Arkansas, and probably western Tennessee here, but things still are going to shift, so make sure you stay tuned for these updates. Now, we are also expecting some snow here into northern Oklahoma, into northwestern Arkansas, and into southwestern Missouri here, southeastern Kansas. We're overall talking about probably 1 to 3 inches, maybe 3 to 5 inches in some isolated spots in northern Oklahoma. But this is a pretty bullish model, honestly, for the snow totals. So we're not expecting much with snow. If we do see a big event out of this, which I think we will, it's definitely going to be the freezing rain and ice aspect here. So again, travel issues, make sure you monitor the forecast, make sure you plan ahead for this, because especially with that ice threat, let me show you here again, the National Weather Service forecast, we are going to have to stay tuned for these updates as big ice is expected in these areas. Alright, that about wraps up this more weather forecast video. Again, series of storms expected from the southern plains into the mid-south, ice, sleet, snow, all on the table. Still some changes possible, but we are expecting pretty big impacts. Make sure you subscribe and go follow me on Twitter. As always, stay prepared out there and plan ahead if you are in these areas that are expecting ice, and I will see you soon with more weather.